Thank you. I am Diane Wild, Chair of the Legacy Endowment Committee, and we welcome you tonight and welcome those who may be joining us online tonight. This is the second in our 4-week series of Endowment Series having to do with end-of-life planning, having your ducks in a row, making sure you are ready for the future. Last week, we did a segment on Endowment 101, just basic information, and then some very specific information about our endowment here at Belmead United Methodist. And as of today, Mike DeWeese has put that together so that we can go back and watch it if you were unable to be here last week or join online. So with that, I am going to introduce our senior pastor, Sam and Marshall Brown, who are going to talk tonight about specific funeral planning, information about our own columbarium. And I think I will turn it over to Sam.
We have had some mic issues, so if it goes in and out, I'll just try to talk really loud, okay? Glad you are all here tonight. I know this is not really an easy topic, and I don't know, maybe it is easy. Is it easy or hard? Maybe not something we want to think about, but it certainly is helpful if we've thought it through a little bit for our loved ones, and if you sort of know the procedure here at Belmead. And so we are talking about planning for a service of death and resurrection, specifically at our church. So there's a couple of things that I will talk about what we do here. And some of you know because you've been in this situation already. But I kind of tried to do it in steps. So something unfortunately happens in your family. We're going to talk about it two ways. If you're coming to plan a service for someone else and how you might think about your own service, okay? And your handouts you don't really need right now, but we will reference those in just a minute. And so the first step, and I don't mean like immediately after something has happened, but I mean when you're ready, call the church. We love you. We want to care for you and be with you in these difficult moments. We have already been in a lot of difficult moments with people, and it's a weird thing to say, a privilege, but it really is a privilege, part of our job to be able to be with you in these moments. Ask us about your preferred date and time for the service. That is really the first step because we have to make sure we have the right personnel to be able to cover facilities manager, musicians, and at least one pastor who can be present. Sometimes people call and they say, hey, we set the date and time. And we're like, okay, we hope we can help you then, so it helps us a lot if you talk to us first about date and time instead of setting one with the funeral home and just calling and telling us when it is. And that I'm not saying that like anybody has done something wrong, just so many things are happening, that that's just kind of what happens. Another kind of immediate question is, are there other clergy that you want to be involved? So Methodists have been, to me, kind of weird about this over the years. I have absolutely no ego about this. If there's somebody you're close to or your family member's close to that you want to come back and do the service, by all means, we want to contact them. And that is something that we can take care of for you. So obviously a lot of Methodist pastors already know each other. It's very easy for us to call or text, and that actually recently happened, trying to get a hold of Kristen or Jim. And so we can do that quickly for you, and you don't have to worry about that. And then almost immediately, you're going to provide us with an obituary. And that kind of happens within 2 or 3 days, and that's okay. But a photo of the deceased person, which we've actually ended up using people's directory photos, which is a good thing. So we can scan and do that ourselves very easily. But if there is a specific photo, that's what we want to get from you. And then a family address for cards to be sent. We've started adding those to our sympathy emails, I think you've seen, and that's just really helpful information for people in the church who want to contact you to have. And then set a meeting with me. Mostly at our church, I operate as the person who talks to everyone else. And so it's easiest if you just come to me, to one person, whichever pastor is sort of leading the service, and then we will take care of talking to everybody else that's involved. And you'll see this in a minute, but it's kind of, actually, I think it's the next step. So let's go to step 2. Meet to plan. And so, yeah, I'm the point of contact for the church or whichever pastor is helping to oversee the service. And then what you want to do is designate a point person in your family. So the main person that we're going to talk to the whole time, who will then talk to your other family members. That makes it really streamlined if we're able to just talk like one-to-one. And then when we meet, we want to know a bunch of things, but the very basic is the information about the deceased. So date of birth, date of death, where they grew up, their profession, their children, their grandchildren, talents, hobbies. Maybe many of you have been a part of a funeral where like a family member wasn't named or something significant was not said about somebody. So that's what we're trying to gather. Like, what are the really significant things that we need to talk about? Who are the people that we need to mention? So that is a part of meeting to plan. Now, of course, what we will also talk about is the worship itself. And I've sort of ordered this by talking about the worship service first and then the logistics after that. So this is our typical order of worship. This is just a sample because most people really, come in and they have like no idea how they want it to look or what the order would be. And so I couldn't fit this all like in one line. It would have been too small, but you can see from prelude to postlude sort of how this flows down the first column and down the second column. And so 2 hymns are pretty standard. You can always add a third. We tend to do them at the beginning and the end. We always have a pastoral prayer and the Lord's Prayer. I won't say always, but most of the time that's pretty standard. We talk about Psalm 23 that we can recite together. That's an option as well. A musical offering is just something added, a piece of music that's added, and that can be a solo, a duet, a portion of our choir, some outside musician, a musician in your family. That can really be anything. And a family witness. And so if there is somebody in the family who wants to stand up and talk either about their personal relationship with the deceased or speak on behalf of their family, they are invited to do that for sure. Scripture reading or readings, homily, benediction, postlude, so kind of standard the rest of that. All right, let's go to the next slide. So when you're thinking about, yes? The definition of a homily, well, what I always say is it's like 7 to 9 minutes, where a sermon's like 15 to 20. So when we say homily, we really mean more about length. Like you're not going to be hearing like a hugely long sermon. Correct. Yeah, you could easily say sermon there instead of homily. So, and it's done different ways. That's a good question. You know, sometimes if the family has already stood up and talked about the deceased, then we kind of get right to here's how they were involved in the church, or this is what this means as Christians, you know. But if we haven't already had the family stand up and talk, then we'll do a lot of that biographical information, and we'll do stories about the deceased at that moment as well. Okay, so when thinking about a service liturgy, these are kind of some questions that you want to think about. What is important to you or to your loved one? Sometimes you don't know what's important to your loved one, and that's okay. So you kind of have to think, what's important to me or to our family? Of course, part of what we're talking about is preparation. So what can you ask your family members now? One of those handouts, not the funeral planning worksheet, but the other one, is actually about you. So when I said we were talking about it from 2 different angles, that one is something for you to consider filling out now. It's kind of like a worksheet for you to fill out and give to me. Last time we did this, which was several years ago, I wanted to like have those on file at the church. so that you could sort of name your preferences. And so that worksheet talks about, what is important to you? Can you go ahead and list some hymns that you like? And then your family members kind of have something to work off of. So you can leave that at your house, or you can give it to the church. And that's sort of the later, they don't have to wonder maybe what you would like. Are there hymns or particular pieces of music that your deceased loved? One way to think about it is, what faith lesson or Christian witness did they imprint on you? And so I feel like pastors sort of develop over time what their homily structure is. And for me, this is something that I try to pull out, is after hearing all these stories about the deceased, what was their Christian witness, and how can we continue to keep that alive as we carry on their spirit? Do you know a person's favorite Bible verse, or even a favorite story? Eddie Gossard comes to mind here because his favorite story was the Good Samaritan. And we were so lucky that I got to sit down with Eddie and talk about his faith as he knew he was dying. And we talked about the Good Samaritan story. And so we were able to use that story, at his service. And then, are there poems or other liturgy that your deceased might like, or that you might like? So it doesn't just have to be scripture or stories from the Bible. It can be, I'm thinking of Barbara Potter, who had a beautiful poem that she loved and wanted to be a part of her service. And so you can go ahead and start a file for your family and leave that somewhere at your house, if that's something you're willing to do. I remember getting a full folder of Barbara Potter's notes, so that's pretty helpful, She had a lot of notes, so then you weren't kind of sure which one she wanted, but we were able to make selections for her, and we had a starting place, so that was great. A lot of people are not sure what scriptures to use, and so I've given you 3, and if you look on the back of that kind of worksheet for yourself, you'll see these same scriptures printed there. So I just put them up here. This is in John 14 about Jesus going ahead of us and preparing a space and preparing a room, reminding us of the Holy Spirit's presence, and saying, peace be with you. So that's a good selection from John. The next passage is from Romans 8, where Paul's talking about nothing separating us from the love of God. And recently, I believe it was Betty Glover's service, it's like it sort of clicked to me that we talk about nothing separating us from God, but when we believe that our loved ones are now with God, we can also say nothing separates us from them. So I really like that passage and that thought from Romans. And then the last one is Revelation 21, of course, when it says, sort of the earth is recreated and God comes to dwell with God's people permanently, and there's no more death or mourning or crying or pain. So sort of this image of what will it look like eternally, and what are our loved ones already experiencing here and now. And so you may have other scriptures, and that's great. Sometimes, or actually a lot of the time, what I like to do as I learn someone's story and, hear from their family members, I like to think of a scripture passage that describes them. So some of you have maybe heard me do that as well. And that's a good way to approach it. So you don't have to come with scriptures. That's something, of course, that I can do for you, or any pastor at our church can do for you. Okay. When talking about music, we just want you to know we'll also help you to think through the music and to secure outside musicians or instrumentalists. And so just like we said, we can secure other clergy for you. This is something we can also do with musical talent. A lot of people ask us, how much should we pay everybody? And everybody has a different answer to that. I'll just, for myself, I believe this is part of my job. It's a part of my calling. I don't feel the need to be compensated. Sometimes outside musicians probably should get a little donation. And so we can help with those questions if you have those as they come up. Musicians, I think, are really the only ones I would say who might expect something. And then hymns, just to kind of give y'all some to think about, actually page 941 in your hymnal has a whole list of hymns for funerals or memorials. And so you can take a look at that. You'll see some of the, I put up some of the ones that are more common, like For All the Saints or Hymn of Promise, Joyful, Joyful, Abide with Me, He leadeth me. And I wanted you to guess what is surprisingly not on the list. Amazing Grace. I thought that was crazy. But of course, a lot of people pick that, and that's great. There's nothing wrong with it. And really, any hymn that you connect with, is what will make the service special. Okay, so that's really the liturgy piece. And now we're going to talk a little bit about logistics. So you have the option of doing visitation. You can also do a reception after the service. I would say we mostly do visitations. A reception's fine if that's what you want to do. But mostly we've been doing visitations 1 or 2 hours before the service. I recommend 1 hour. 2's okay. 3 is way too long. So you can do this in the lounge or in our fellowship hall. Of course, most people like to use the lounge because it's nice and it's there. And so we will ask you sort of a part of our planning. This is still all under step 2, like planning when we're sitting down to talk. And so we'll ask you if you have pictures or videos or items from your loved one that you'd like to display in the lounge. And you can bring all of that, or your friends can bring all of that to set up the morning of. If we don't have anything else going on, you can come the day before. And so that's something to consider. We also can create a space for children or for family members to kind of be out of the crowd of the lounge if that's needed. We've created a kids' room down in the library several times where we've put crayons and toys and things for kids that just, don't really want to be in a big room like that. So we can create sort of a resting place for everybody if they need a break. And then, that says gifts. I didn't notice that. Gifts are like those funny things you send in a text. It's supposed to say gifts. Gifts of flowers are delivered and placed in the lounge or the fellowship hall. And so we do try to have only one flower arrangement in the sanctuary, and it's on the altar. All the other flowers are sort of over here in the lounge space. And then we can also, of course, put out water or coffee or have some snacks. You're welcome to bring your own snacks. Most people don't snack that much. So, but if you want it out there outside the lounge, that's a perfect place to put it. And then when we start talking about the service logistics themselves, here are just some of the questions that we talk about that maybe you wouldn't think of, first of all, which is, how will the family walk in and out of the service? Do you want to process down the middle aisle of the sanctuary to a hymn? Do you want to just go behind the sanctuary and come in from in front of the pulpit and slide right into the pew? And the same thing for how you exit. And so we talk about that logistics. We talk about pews that need to be reserved. So you give us sort of just a number for how many family members you think will be a part of that coming in and that exiting. Do you have your own guest book? Some people have one that they hold on to for multiple family members, but we have not a million. That would be an exaggeration, but we have a lot of guest books. So you don't have to bring your own. We have one that we can provide for you. And then would you like the body, the ashes, or a picture to be present? Some people have put the ashes on display in the lounge, and then we have carried them into the service, as we've processed into the service, and we've placed them on a podium up in the front. You can do that. You can not have the ashes at all. Of course, bodies are different. You typically do have the body in the sanctuary. And then, or you could put a picture of your loved one up at the front of the sanctuary. So those are kind of the options. And then we talked about one flower arrangement on the altar, and the altar guild will help to provide that. So you just let us know and we'll get that taken care of. And then other service logistics are ushers, pallbearers, and mostly, I don't know that we have a ton of we haven't done, I know this way this sounds coming out, but we haven't really done a lot of body funerals lately. And so these might not be necessary. You can, though, always have honorary pallbearers if that's something that's important to you. And then are there family members who maybe don't want to do a family witness, but you would like to participate in the service in other ways? And so they can read scripture or sing or pray or whatever it is that your family might desire. We even talk about the number of bulletins that you think we should print. Sometimes we just make guesses on that. It's kind of hard to know how many people are going to show up. And then what is needed following the service? So some people, of course, will walk straight out to the Columbarium, which Marshall will pitch to you in a minute. And some will go to a certain graveside. And so do you need a pastor to come with you? That's a question that we ask. Do you need us to come out to the graveside or to do anything else for you after the service? Okay. So that was all, like, you sat down with me and that's what we talked about. I do want you to look at that service planning sheet now, this one. Yep. BMUMC Service of Death and Resurrection Planning Worksheet. This is basically everything, I hope, that I just said to you on the slides. So front and back are those kind of liturgy questions, and then some of the details about the deceased, visitation, reception. So that's something we'll look at together when we come to talk about the service. So I just wanted you to have a copy of that to take with you. Okay, step 3, after we have sat down and we've had a conversation about all these logistics, then you will go home and you will send us memories. And so we, that may be someone that I know really well, but we still only have a certain kind of relationship with that person. And so we want to know all the details as possible to share about your loved one. And we want you to help by asking family and friends to email me with words, thoughts, memories, or lessons learned from this person. Sometimes that's intimidating to people, so I just say, even if you send me adjectives, just a few words about the person, that helps just to get a sense for who they were, and you start to see, things that stick out from multiple people, so you kind of, get a sense of their character. And then we will give you a deadline to submit these, and that sounds kind of intense, but just like, sometimes even the day before the service is fine, but just, tell your family members to send us this by this time, which helps us with our planning. And then step 4, the actual service is happening. Show up early to kind of give yourself a minute to breathe. I think that these moments feel pretty shocking, and you're still kind of just, I don't know, in your own world in a sense. So just show up early so you can kind of get your head on straight. Designate someone else to be in charge of any on-site logistics. So this is when your friends say, hey, can I come and set up that lounge? And you say, yes, you can. Let your friends help you out, your friends and family, with some of those pieces of the logistics. And then about 10 minutes before the service, which I think you've all seen, we clear out the visitation room for a prayer with the family, make sure everybody knows what's happening next and they feel good about how we're walking in and where they're going to sit. So we'll just kind of go over any more of those last minute logistics. And, I've seen a lot of people's faces in these moments, so just try your best to be as present as you can, but also give yourself grace, because it's just a very difficult moment. Okay, I think most of you know this, but if not, we do have wonderful volunteers who help with logistics during the visitation and during the service. And so you've maybe seen Ann Price or Peggy Hammond or Lou Morrow helping to hand out bulletins, asking people to sign the guest book, helping the pastors or Casey with background logistics things day of. And so they're just generally available to you to help wherever is needed. And talking to the funeral home, they typically will call me. I don't have to reach out to them because they reach out to me first, but me or Casey will talk directly with the funeral home about any logistics that need to happen with them. So you don't really have to worry about that part either. And then step 5 is just really after the fact. Check in with me or someone else on our pastoral team if you find yourself struggling. I just want to remind you, we do have Chris and Kara at the Counseling Center here at the church. I like to say that everybody grieves and celebrates in the ways that are authentic to who they are. So don't worry if you're grieving, doesn't look like someone else is grieving. Remember that grief ebbs and flows. And remember that All Saints Sunday will be a moment to honor your loved one. And that's something you can invite other family members to as well, who might need that kind of sacramental moment. So, is that my last slide, Michael? Okay, that is my last slide. And we're gonna wait to take your questions after Marshall does his columbarium piece. You ready? Okay.
Thanks, Sam. As you all know, Edgar Jones really put together the columbarium at our church, and what a wonderful site that has become for all of us. The columbarium is intended to hold the cremated remains of individuals who have a connection to the church. So that doesn't necessarily mean church members, but we have had grandchildren of church members that have passed away. I can recall one recently that passed away within about 30 days after his grandmother, and so the columbarium was used for his ashes as well. And then because of the caring, loving ministry of the church to that family, the mother and father joined the church and also purchased 2 more niches. So the columbarium is really a wonderful ministry of our church. The columbarium has 120 units or niches in it, equally divided between 60 on the administrative wing side and 60 on the sanctuary side. There are currently about 50 niches available. I say about 50 because we've had some members move away and then donate their niche back to the church. So we currently have 3 niches available. If there's a need, we're not going to resell those. We keep those in our inventory. So if we have a member that needs that service, then we can provide it for them. A niche will hold 2 urns, okay? So, and the urns are ones that must be purchased through the church. We have some urns in inventory. We have about a half dozen of those in inventory. Some of us, when Edgar was putting together the columbarium in early 2007, 2006 period, a lot of us pre-purchased niches. And then he came along about a year or 2 later and said, well, okay, if you want to buy urns, you can go ahead and pre-purchase your urns. And so if there's a member that has passed away and they're in the columbarium, first thing I do is go out and check to see if there's a couple of urns in their niche, because Edgar would put those urns in the niche. And so if you have any question about it, check with me and I'll go and and take your blank face stone off and see if you have a couple of urns in there. We do in ours. But the urns are designed to fit into the niche. So when you go to the funeral home to make arrangements for cremation services, you don't need to purchase an urn, okay? Now, I will tell you this, the current services, the current charge for a cremation is around $1,000 to $1,500. So, a traditional funeral can be tens of thousands of dollars depending on what the funeral home provides. So not only is this a lovely way to be here at the church, but it's a very economical way to, for your last hurrah. And there's a good group in the Columbarium. I'm gonna tell you, there's a lot of fun in there. Sam has talked to solemn things about services and those, but, when someone passes that's had a rich and full life, it's a real celebration that, that they're going home to be with their family. And I'm going to tell you, for my funeral, I don't want a tear to be shed. I want to be a lot of fun. John McAllister had a Mardi Gras band, playing When the Saints Go Marching In. I'm right on with that one. I'm going to suggest that if you purchase a niche in our columbarium, that you make a determination as to how you want your name listed on there. For example, a lot of married ladies may or may not include their maiden name. But if you make that decision on the front end, then it saves a family having to make that decision during a most trying time. So what I have found in working with families here at the church, the more of those decisions that can be made so that everything is set, is so much easier for the family when they come in and say, okay, well, your mom and dad have made this decision, they want it done this way, and there's no issue. I have had a situation where I have had to almost redo a facing stone because of how they wanted the name listed. Now, there's the name on the facing stone, and then there's the urn plate. So some people want, like Marshall Edward Brown on the facing stone, but maybe my grandkids call me Popsy Brown. Okay, so if they wanted Popsy on the urn plate, that's fine. What the urn plate is designed to do is it's designed to identify whose ashes are in that particular urn. So there can be a difference between the name on the facing stone and the name on the urn plate, okay? Let me talk a little bit about the process of what takes place when a person that passes away that's in the columbarium here at the church. When we get the notice, the church has a facing stone that has a cross on it. I go out to their niche, take the blank stone off, and put that stone with the cross on it on the niche. Then normally a cremation will take anywhere from a week to 10 days. Now, to get not only the cremation done, but the paperwork that the state requires as well. During COVID, when there were so many deaths, it took much longer, okay? So today, that process may be a little shorter, okay? So just think about, so you're going to be a week to 10 days out from the date of death until the cremated remains are available. If you would like, I will be more than happy to go to the cremation service or the funeral home to pick up those remains. I don't want to be morbid, but when you have your loved one, your mother or father, and they come in a cardboard box in a plastic sack sealed with a number on it, that can be a little bit disconcerting, okay? So if you would like, now you have to give me permission, give the funeral home permission for me to pick it up. But I will go to the funeral home, pick up those remains. On the day of the service, generally, we put the remains in the urn, in the bag. Okay, the bag goes into the urn. If there's enough room in that urn, we can I'll ask the family if they would like mementos. I've had some notes from children, grandchildren. I've had some dog collars, or a dog tag. Barry Hatcher wanted Harris Hatcher, the ball that he got his hole-in-one in his urn. I don't think Barry would mind if I told that story. And it barely went in because Harris, but we got it in there, okay? So, but once the top is put on the urn, it has to be cut off. It can't be opened up because it seals on all four sides. So I will. Well, yes. Normally. Well, we can have the memorial service at any time.
Yeah, let me repeat it just for people who are watching online. They asked if, do you need to wait on the remains to be able to have the service? The answer is no, you don't have to. So we just we have the box and we have the cross with the cross on the nameplate,
Right.
faceplate. So you could go ahead without it if you had to, but that's kind of up to you.
And sometimes, as Sam was saying, there's the family, if the urn is there, we go straight out to the Columbarium and do the interment. And it's a lovely service. What we do is we place the pedestal with the urn on it in front of the niche. Sam has some words of prayer. Then we take the facing stone with a cross off the niche, and before we inter the urn, Sam will pass it to the family members to touch. And that's really a lovely, lovely time to, for people to say their final goodbye. And then we put the urn in the niche and put the facing stone with the person's name on it and their date of birth and date of death. Now, when the second person is interred in the niche, we order a new facing stone. And the reason for that is there can be quite a time difference between the first person interred and the second one interred. And that facing stone engraving weathers over time. So we order a second stone when the second urn is interred in the niche. Okay, are we clear about kind of how things are going? Okay. Yes.
Two questions. First one is, do you ever have a request where someone wants their ashes, maybe part of their ashes here, but part of their ashes sprinkled somewhere else? If that's the case, how is that done?
Okay, we have not had that request, but that would not be difficult to do. So if you wanted that, you know, maybe like I love to fish, I want half my ashes interred here and half sprinkled on the Caney Fork, okay? That fish would love it. I don't know if TWRA will like it, but fish will love it.
So a follow-up question then is, if we own a funeral plot for someone, can the ashes be buried at that funeral plot?
Sure. I mean, as long as I mean, some places some churches they don't have a columbarium with a niche where the ashes, they dig up some ground, pour the ashes in it, cover it up. So, you know, if the cemetery will allow the burying of the ashes there, then that's not a problem.
Buried in an urn in a box or not.
And now I'll tell you this.
Yeah.
The parents, one thing that the parents gave their body to Vanderbilt to 11 minutes later. I think I had a problem with that. It was 2 years that they get back. It's not like you relive the whole thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I did not like that.
Yeah.
Now when I go, my ashes are gonna be here, and they're gonna be at Mount Olivet, and what we have right next, right with Edwards.
Yeah. Okay, so are you saying you would like to have your ashes split between them? Yeah, okay. I have never done that. The bag, it's a heavy plastic bag. It's sealed, and there's a number that's a number stamped in a lead, located. Well, that ties into the death certificate, okay? And so that comes from the funeral home or the cremation service, and and so that bag can be opened, and the ashes, and some the funeral homes will say if you want small ashes, a small urn for the grandkids, or you want to lock it with some of the ash. I mean, they come up with all kinds of things to sell you, okay? All right, let's go into cost. Okay, the current charge for a niche at Belmead United Methodist Church is $750. Edgar's original concept was when we sold all the 120 niches, we would have enough money to build a second columbarium unit. And I anticipate, Kim, you may have some other suggestions, that it would go as you face to the left or right of the current one. I think we can put 2, maybe 3 more in there, okay? What Edgar didn't count on was inflation and maintenance. So my kind of concept is that the columbarium should be self-sufficient. and it ought to pay for itself. And any stonework, grouting, right now we really need to do some caulking around the frame itself. Edgar had Morgan supply the stone at cost. That ain't available anymore. Morgan's in the Columbarium. So, you know, I have touched base with Homecoming that provides the framework to hold the niches, and they tell us that we are significantly underpriced. We have looked at St. George's, Vanderbilt, West End, Brentwood, Calvary, and they are 2 to 3, 4 times what we are. Well, all right, let's go back. The niche is currently $750. The urn plate, and the facing stone plus shipping is roughly $250. What we have been doing here is working with families. If they buy a niche or a contract for a niche in the Columbarium, then, and it's a couple, $1,250 will cover all the costs. So everything that the church would charge in relationship to the Columbarium is covered by that $1,250. So now the cremation is separate, okay? So you have to do that yourself. But $1,250 is what it is now. I anticipate, and trustees has discussed this, that the niche will sometime go next year to $1,500 to $1,750 for the niche, plus the $250 per person. So, you know, it may go to $2,250. However, we're going to give the congregation ample notice. We'll, you know, give you 90 days, something like that, before we implement that price increase. So if you would like to have a niche in the Columbarium, come see me, Mike, Sam. I can get you all fixed up. Yes.
I know Rob and I bought that. I have no idea where it is, where we put it, where we bought it.
Okay.
I mean, I know in the ditch, I know where that is. But, yeah, I have no idea where my paperwork is. I hope you bought it.
Yes, I do. I have a file. I inherited Edgar's file. Lou Mara has worked with me to help organize that file. I can tell you exactly where you're.
What do I need to upgrade?
Yeah.
To the next level up.
Yeah. Well, there, Kim, I'll tell you, we need to discuss where your niche is, because you signed a contract but didn't select a niche.
I've got something to say that is very comfortable, I think. Big stage. He and I act like we can't stand each other. And if anybody sees us talking like this, you know, what is their problem? We have more money. We just have we've been doing it for 23 years now. When you were in the choir. When I was in the choir, and we still do it now. Anyway, so when Margaret was going around trying to show us where we could, all of a sudden he said, and big page, and it's like, that's it, brother, that's it, you gotta do that big page. But I called him and then said, guess what, even in church, you do that.
Yeah. Well, a couple of things, and I don't have any contracts here tonight, so I'll be glad to get them to you if you would like. But if you change your mind about being in the columbarium after you purchase, the church is under no obligation to buy the niche back from you, okay? We've had a couple of people who have moved their membership, decided they didn't want to be in the columbarium, contact me and say, I want my money back. Sorry, no can do. And after we talked about it, the person graciously made a donation of their niche back to the church. So it was not an issue, but I just wanted to make sure that you realize that, okay? The church has the right to determine, the use for, well, the church has the right to control what's in the columbarium anyway. It's only for human remains. I mean, we can't put Fido in there, Now, I'm going to tell you, I'm not going to tell you there's not some animal remains out there mixed in with human remains. We can accommodate that in your urn if there's room, but we're not going to put it on the facing stone, okay? I'll be glad to work with you any way that you would like. Yes.
How am I gonna find out where who's
Okay.
not in the car?
Give me a call. I tell you, I will.
Just tell Rob.
Okay, I'll tell Rob. All right. Any other questions?
Any questions about anything? We have about 5 more minutes.
I do think when you're chatting with the family, friends will want to make donations to the church, even if it's not in your obituary or you didn't designate it. So you need to talk to family members. If a donation comes in memory of your mother, where would you want it?
So Jamie was saying if people make donations to the church, even if it's not written in the obituary, talk to the family about where they want it applied at the church. Yeah, they might want it in a particular fund, or they might want it, Yeah. Okay, good question. Good add-on. Sarah? You want a copy of the slides? Yeah, we can send that to you all, or to you, whomever would like it. Kim?
I think this is just a marvelous explanation. And, what you guys publish a thing or make it online or whatever would be great because it covers so many things. Answer, you know what a homily is.
Yeah, we are gonna use the videos and post them online, but we could also use the information or the slides themselves. Diane?
Is there a particular cremation service that the church uses or recommends?
Is there a cremation service you recommend?
Not really, Diane. The one I guess I have used most often, or that's been used most often, is Nashville Funeral and Cremation Service down on Church Street, or off Church Street. A lot of funeral homes will offer cremation services, but they don't have a crematorium. So they go there and then upcharge you. So the last time I looked, which was several years ago, the Nashville Funeral and Cremation Service offers, so if, let's say the loved one passes away at the hospital, they'll go pick up the body, they'll take it down there, they'll prepare it for cremation, they'll do all the paperwork with the state, and then notify you when the ashes are ready. The cost of that, I think, was right at $1,000, okay? But some of the people that were at West Nashville have gone out on their own and started a cremation service. And I think they're kind of like independent contractors. You contract with them, and then they go and find the entity that'll do the best job.
Let me add this too. If you can't say no to people at the funeral home, let one of us go with you. when they start to ask you if you want this and this and this. And they, speaking of that, they don't really need to print anything for you about your loved one because we print the bulletins. Unless you want something separate, the church will take care of the bulletins themselves, Robin. You don't have to have a funeral home. No, Diane was just asking which one is used.
You can go directly to, and you can prepay it. You can arrange
Oh.
now for your service at some point in the future. I don't know if they have a special pricing for that. I would imagine they do. Just guessing, but
They'll have it on sale.
Yeah.
Friday.
And most funeral homes have guest books. Like that they just bring, you mean? Yeah. And I think we probably have them from the funeral home. Yeah, we probably have a bunch of them. Diane?
Well, and I would say just proofread. Because my younger brothers, lives here, funeral home was the wrong, whoever did the death certificate had the wrong date. And it has paused, and he died like 11:30 p.m. and the body wasn't moved until the next day, so you can sort of see that he died on one day and paperwork said the next day, and it's caused legal nightmares.
Any other questions?
I think pointing that out, that you don't have to use a funeral home.
absolutely.
I have a situation where I may be dealing with this sometime in the next couple of years, and so this has been great.
Good.
To know that, I didn't know that.
But again, the best thing is to pre-plan. So if you anticipate something we're all going to. So, we've all got to do that planning, or our family has to do that planning at some point in time. So the better organized you can be, the easier it is for everyone.
I'm going to give a Starbucks gift card to the first person who turns that worksheet into me.
You go to funerals, save the program, circle things that
Yes.
you really like.
Yeah.
My mother-in-law had a huge file
Yeah.
of programs.
Yeah. Circle things you like from other services.
I have them on the top of my desk.
There's another thing that you could point out, just because I know this is so helpful, is the savings of that could be put to use in a donation. The family may say, well, we should do the body thing versus the cremation, but cremation would allow money to go maybe to a cause that person really liked.
Absolutely.
Yeah. It's a great idea.
Yep.
Thanks, everyone. We'll see you next week for advanced wills and advanced directives with Martha Brooke Martin, who's an attorney, a lawyer. Yep.
And I'll be glad to answer any